All right, back for another 5 minutes of content here before I go back to my vacation. Hit the like, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Share this with your friends because I'm practically shadow banned on YouTube, so people won't know or get to hear good stuff that are going to help them in the dating market, sexual marketplace, and with their relationships. Not going to hear this stuff without your guys' help. So I appreciate the support. Now let's get into a question or something that came up. Have a lot of sexual topics out here while I'm out here in the lovely weather. So we're going to keep going with that theme. Today we're going to talk about, is it alpha or is it beta to make her orgasm and to please her sexually? That's an interesting question or topic in these spaces because we've had claims. I want to say it was Anthel K's book, Married Dude Primer, whatever, or something like that. Our author named Anthel K. I think that was his claim that it was beta comfort that would make her be pleased sexually. I don't agree with that, actually. And a question had come up too about imprinting. Well, if she sees you as alpha, isn't she supposed to be pleasing you sexually? Well, of course, the answer is yes to that, right? Of course, she is very motivated to please you sexually when she sees you as her sexual best, as her apex alpha, right? That's a given. But that doesn't mean you're not trying to please her sexually or that you're not pleasing her sexually, right? So I would argue actually that her orgasms, particularly depending on how you're delivering those and the delivery method, is can be in fact a very alpha thing. So let's look back into evolutionary psychology or evolutionary biology, okay, and how we're designed. Women are designed to take longer to orgasm than men, and it takes more arousal components for that to happen for them. Have you ever asked yourself why that might be? Well, we, through research, we realize for most of our evolutionary past, we're talking over well over hundred a thousand years, more than that, almost 200,000 years worth of evolution. We were polyamorous. We lived in small hunter-gatherer tribes, and they were polyamorous tribes where women slept with multiple men. Everything was shared, including resources. So what would happen is there's a lot more into this that's beyond the scope of a 5 minute video. But what happened is she was still hypergamous, but she would pick the top one, two, three, or four, two or three or four men in the tribe to have sex with. Okay. She would have sex with multiple men because everything was shared, food, resources, and of course, women and sex was shared. Now, she was always going for the top tier man in that tribe, but it might be two or three guys that are the top tier that she might sleep with. She might sleep with one or two beta guys transactionally when she was off cycle. And there was inter vaginal competition among sperm. So sperm would actually compete inside of her body to fertilize the egg. Now we find though that through orgasms, women release a bunch of oxytocin, and that oxytocin acts as a pathway to the sperm of the person that is providing that orgasm. So that most recent ejaculate acts as a shuttling effect and gets shuttled over to those eggs. And so there's more to the science behind this. I'm not going to get in the weeds, but essentially orgasms and oxytocin makes her more likely to get pregnant. So figuring too why it might take her longer to orgasm and take more things to happen for her, well, that keeps her sexually active. From an evolutionary perspective, if she has an orgasm with the first guy she has sex with during ovulation, she's likely to take a much longer break before she has sex again. Or if she's not sexually satisfied yet, then she'll continue to seek out men to have sex with during that phase. So she'll continue to add ejaculate into her body to make the likelihood of getting pregnant higher, right? And so the guy that so with that, she's driven to keep having sex until she's sexually satisfied. That's the pleasure principle at work, and that causes her to be more likely to be pregnant. But when she finally hits that alpha guy, it's the alpha guy that's going to cause the orgasm. Remember, we're talking hunter-gatherer times. They don't have access to sexual instruction, porn, vibrators, any of that kind of stuff, right? They're really pretty much hitting it and quitting it. All right. These dudes are done in 4 minutes probably. All right. It's a short amount of time, quick sex, and that's how it would have been in our evolutionary past. So the guy she was likely to orgasm with would be the guy she was most sexually attracted with and hit the most attraction triggers for her. So the guy that she would orgasm with or have, even multiple orgasms with would be the guy that she would see as alpha. So now we can kind of backwards engineer that into today. So today we have more sexual techniques available to us. We're more evolved, in terms of our knowledge of the human body and psychology and what we can do to create sexual pleasure. But her body has been evolving with this other strategy for most of history. So even though it would take more effort and time, which could be seen as beta stuff or whatever, trying to please her or whatever, it's the actual act of the orgasm and having sexual pleasure with a particular partner is going to trigger that. She's going to have those triggers believing this person is more or less alpha, even if he's not and his other behavior is not congruent. Those are alpha signals, we'll say, that ability to orgasm with that guy. Because even though he may use a bunch of tricks to make that happen, okay, that they didn't have available in evolutionary past, the act of having that sexual pleasure and that orgasm, well, that's something she wouldn't have had ordinarily with guys who were not as attractive, not as good of genetic sexual options. So in short, they've evolved to orgasm with the alpha guy. So if you're creating orgasms and creating peak sexual experiences for her, even though you're putting effort into her to make that happen, that is going to signal to her hindbrain that you are the alpha. Okay, so that's why I do think that her sexual pleasure is linked in her primal hindbrain to believing that you're alpha. Now, a lot of this does sort of depend, though, too, on the level of dominance that you have in the bedroom. Are you dominating her, and are you almost forcing, not that the sex is forced, of course, but through consensual sex, forcing those orgasms almost, where she can't control her body and you take over her? That's going to be the alpha thing. Or is she basically getting herself off on you, right? Where you're not really doing it, she's kind of doing it. That would be more, we could say, more beta. Or you're having to, soften what you're doing and please her and placate to her. That would obviously be more beta. So the behavior in the bedroom, very dominant sex, being a bit more aggressive, so on and so forth, will signal those alpha traits to her, signal that you are her alpha, and of course, pleasing her sexually would signal that. So I would say for keeping frame and having that framework, or having her have that belief that you're her best sexual option, you're that alpha guy, I would say that sexual pleasure and the experience you create, if you can create very intense sexual experiences for her, that is going to anchor her more to you, have her pair bond more to you, and be more likely for her to see you as her apex alpha. And in fact, I will argue that if you are not her sexual best, that means in the bedroom, creating the best and most peak experiences with her, she's just not going to see you as the apex alpha that you'd like her to see you as. So once again, sex is really important. I'll plug again Sterling's course. That will help you, okay? Dominance Escalation course, a sexual course. I'll link it in the description if you want to buy into that. But this is a very important component. I just have heard comments about guys believing or thinking that, well, she should just be pleasing me and pleasing her. Isn't that beta? I would disagree with that. Okay, it's a two-way street, and you're going to have a better time if you're creating good sexual experiences with your partner. Period. End of story. All right, guys. Thanks again for tuning in. Take care.